If there's one place every horror movie fan should visit at least once in their lives, it's Santa Cruz, California. Located 70 miles south of San Francisco, Santa Cruz is one of the most popular beach towns in Northern California. Known for its redwood mountains, gorgeous ocean views, and laid-back attitude where anything goes, it's easy to see why filmmakers have used this town on multiple occasions as backdrops for their cinematic projects. Although I grew up spending my summers visiting Santa Cruz as a kid, it wasn't until high school and into adulthood that I realized just how important this unassuming town is to the horror genre. If you've ever wanted to take a tour of the fictional Santa Carla, aka Santa Cruz, I combined my love for film and travel to bring you along as I explore famous filming locations for horror movies such as The Lost Boys, Us, and Killer Klowns from Outer Space. So grab your wooden stakes, put on your most comfortable walking shoes, and let's get going. Starting with our first and most iconic location, the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk. The Boardwalk is an oceanfront amusement park that was founded in 1907. It's one of California's oldest surviving to this day, and I really don't think there's much to compare it to outside of the Santa Monica Pier or Coney Island. Every time I visit, I'm just in awe of how one place can be filled with so much fun, romance, nostalgia, and it just feels like there's tons of stories lurking around every corner. And some of my favorite stories involve one of my favorite movies, 1987's The Lost Boys. The movie opens up with a nice overhead shot of the boardwalk, and then we get introduced to, for the very first time, David and his crew, his Lost Boys. They're living their best lives on a carousel that is still at the boardwalk to this very day. There's actually a very specific name for this kind of carousel. It's called a loof carousel. Loof carousels are pretty famous for being hand carved, and there was only about 40 of them that were placed in amusement parks throughout the United States, but only 10 survive to this day, one of them being at the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk. Right next door is another really important filming location for the Lost Boys, and that is the Colonnade. Michael's getting really tested by David, and so one of his first challenges is to kind of like outride him on his motorcycle, and they do take a path through the Colonnade. Something really fun to note, if you do ever plan on visiting the boardwalk and you're a huge Lost Boys fan, I highly suggest you coming in the early summer months because the boardwalk puts on a free showing of the Lost Boys every summer. Get there very early if you want a good spot near the front because every year the crowds get larger and larger. People even set up camp in the afternoon and they just hang out all day until the movie starts around sunset. Oftentimes, the boardwalk has some actors do meet and greets. Like one year in high school, I saw Corey Feldman perform with his band that he had at the time before he then introduced the screening of the movie. And this past year, they also did have one of the Frog Brothers, Jameson Newlander, there too. It's honestly really shocking to me how virtually unchanged the boardwalk is since the 1980s when the Lost Boys and the Killer Klowns from Outer Space movies were filmed here. You can still visit the original hot dog on a stick, the Giant Dipper ride, and all the stalls featured in the background. Speaking of Killer Klowns, there are a few creepy dark rides that I always love to go on when I visit, like the Haunted Castle and especially the Fright Walk. The Fright Walk is not going to be scary to any frequent haunted house or maze attendee, but for scaredy cats like me, it's the Goldilocks of haunted houses. I think I was also pretty excited because I learned that there was a Killer Klowns room there. It's funny because The Lost Boys gets a whole lot of coverage for being filmed here, but there's not a lot of Killer Klowns love. Another thing I was really surprised to learn was how little Jordan Peele added to the boardwalk beyond the Hall of Mirrors, so every location you see in that film, like the outside perimeter, is there for you to experience for yourself when you visit the boardwalk. And sadly, there are no actual tunnels below the boardwalk where creepy little doppelgangers live their sad lives, but there are tunnels below as emergency shelters and for storage purposes. There are two major ways to enter the long stretch of land that is the Santa Cruz Boardwalk area, both of which have been captured on film. One option is that you can enter through East Cliff Drive like Adelaide and her family did in Us. Or you could enter through the West Cliff Drive, which is how the Emerson family did in The Lost Boys. My favorite path is 100% West Cliff Drive. It's a location where you can actually spend some time, whereas East Cliff is simply a road and residential area. The Lost Boys first introduces us to the Emerson family with a fun montage of the unique cast of characters who hang around the streets of Santa Carla. They're definitely an eclectic bunch. The Emersons travel down Westcliff Drive, and it's where we learn Santa Carla's claim to fame as the murder capital of the world. It's a very lively 3-mile walking and biking path, and a perfect spot to observe surfers battle those Santa Cruz waves. It's also one of the few places that has a dog beach, so if you're somebody like me that doesn't have a pet, it's a great place to go dog watching. I love hanging around the lighthouse around sunset, and it's gorgeous as a location to take photos or walk your own dog. It has a decent amount of parking, public restrooms are there too, and there is a little coffee shop with small bites that's going to be typically open during the warmer months. Right next door to the boardwalk, I'm not exaggerating, it's basically connected to it, is the Santa Cruz Municipal Wharf. The wharf is where 2 minor scenes were filmed for The Lost Boys, Max's video store and the restaurant Max and Lucy visit for their first date. There aren't too many exterior shots of the wharf that are included in the movie, but it's still really cool to know that the interiors of several shops were used in the movie and are still standing today. The wharf is also a great location during the day, around sunset, or in the evening time to view the boardwalk in the same direction and angles of the park and the beach that you'll see in all 3 movies. Max's video store is where Lucy meets Max with those amazing shoulder pads and she gets a job there. It'd be really cool if video stores were still a thing, but where we stand today, it is now a souvenir shop. One of my favorite scenes in the entire movie is the phone call between Sam and his mom when Michael is out of the window. Lucy is rightfully in hysterics, and Sam is losing his mind over his brother's ability to levitate. Lucy goes flying out of the restaurant, which is actually located on the wharf. The restaurant that she is dining and dashing from Max is actually now called Las Alitas, which is a Mexican restaurant. I've never ate there before, but my favorite spot on the wharf is the Tiki Bar right next door, which has fantastic drinks, decor, and service, where you're more likely to get a chance to nab a table with a view because it has a rotating bar. Seriously, it's genius, and you can even see the Westcliff Drive lighthouse in the distance, which is where the Emerson crew drive through on their way to Grandpa's house for the very first time. We also need to make mention of downtown Santa Cruz as a really important filming location for the Lost Boys movies. In the Lost Boys, we have the Frog comic book store. The Frog family comic book store is actually called Atlantis Fantasy World. It seemingly is located on the Santa Carla boardwalk, but actually the filming location was downtown Santa Cruz. It's moved several times, largely due to a really big earthquake that took place in California in the 1980s. Even though they have moved locations, it's still really important to visit this place because you can see the original movie prop that was featured in the film, the fictional Vampires Everywhere comic, alongside the real-life comic Vanity. I was told by one of the cashiers at the store when I went recently that filmmakers added the Vampires Everywhere comic book cover to the top of the Vanity comic, and then new pages were added to the comic that aligned with the script's plot. While I was there, I purchased a graphic novel follow-up to The Lost Boys from the store, which is one of my few 5-star reads this summer. I swear this comic book is the sequel all Lost Boy fans really deserved, but never got. The lovely Lucy, the handsome Michael, and the adorable Sam begin a new post-divorce chapter in their lives, alongside one of my favorite characters in the entire movie, Grandpa. Grandpa seriously gets the best lines in the entire movie, and this brings us to our second location, Grandpa's house. And I think it's definitely one of the overlooked filming locations on this list because it's not as easy to get to as, say, the boardwalk. If you are interested in visiting Grandpa's house, I definitely recommend parking at the base of Golf Club Drive closer to River Street. The park name you might want to search up is Pogo Nip Park. Once you cross the train tracks, there's really nowhere else to park, so the base is as far as you can go with a nice spot to park. Just stay on Golf Club Drive and you'll see Grandpa's house in about 0.7 miles. The path is slightly uphill, but definitely beginner friendly. This building was originally a part of a country club built in 1911, serving as a social spot until it closed permanently during World War II. Then, in the 1980s, the clubhouse, very much abandoned, provided exterior shots for Grandpa's house in the Lost Boys movie. As you take your time walking around, There's a path for you to walk all the way around this building, and it's really cool to see once you have that image of those opening scenes in your head, where everything was placed in the film versus like what is still standing today. We had a lot of fun there when we were visiting, trying to imagine that scene where Michael was floating outside the window, like which window he could have been right in front of. Grandpa's house is just one part of a larger park, so if you are really into hiking, there's some really great trails around the area. I'm just so curious how they were able to get like all the film equipment up here, transported, and filming all these scenes. It's not the most isolated location, but it's definitely not the easiest to get things from, the street to the actual building itself. That's a wrap on our whirlwind tour of Santa Cruz, a beach town beloved by both filmmakers and locals alike. There's tons more filming locations in the city that I couldn't get to, so the spooky adventure continues. Be sure to share down below in the comments which of the 3 movies is your absolute top favorite film. I probably have to go with The Lost Boys since I fell in love with this movie in high school, but Killer Klowns from Outer Space is a very close second because its colorful, bright camp is unmatched. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on my next video. Bye!